Bill Spencer has never known true regret until now, and each breath he takes feels heavy with the memory of his fateful decision, granting clemency to Luna Nozawa, the woman he believed innocent of malice, only to discover too late that his act of mercy set in motion a chain of events that left his son, Liam, on the brink of death. In the sterile, echoing halls of the courthouse this morning, Bill stood alone at the defendant's table, his broad shoulders slumped beneath the weight of public scrutiny and personal shame. Reporters' flashes erupted around him like gunfire as he rose to face the judge. His once steely blue gaze was now clouded with remorse, the man who commands a media empire reduced to a trembling figure, ready to accept whatever sentence the court deemed fit. He read aloud the statement he had prepared, his voice cracking as he admitted that in granting Luna full pardon he had failed in his judgment, that his paternal love had blinded him to the gravity of the danger she posed, that his desperation to protect his company's rising star had cost his son the chance to walk out of the hospital unaided. Each word felt like a confession carved into his heart, each admission a nail in the coffin of his reputation. And yet he persisted, driven by a need to atone, a need to save what remained of his fractured soul by accepting responsibility, whatever the cost. All around him, the Spencer name, once synonymous with power and prestige, seemed to buckle under the strain of his guilt. As the bailiff called for order, Bill remained standing, prepared to face imprisonment rather than see his family torn apart by scandal and deceit. Meanwhile, far from the marble floors and oak-paneled walls of the courtroom, another kind of battle raged within the glass towers of Spencer Publications. Catherine Katie Logan, once the gracious stepmother figure to the Spencer clan, had traded her warm smiles for a calculated determination as she launched a surprise bid to usurp control of the company's board. Word had spread that Wyatt Spencer, her husband and Bill's eldest son, had been quietly rallying support among key shareholders, positioning himself as the modern face of Spencer Publications, innovative, daring, and unencumbered by his father's shadow. Yet Katie refused to be sidelined. Armed with decades of savvy experience in high-stakes negotiations, she filed an emergency motion demanding an immediate vote to remove Bill as CEO, citing his recent admission of negligence as grounds for incompetence. Wyatt, torn between loyalty to his father and admiration for his wife's tenacity, found himself at the epicenter of a family civil war. He strode into the boardroom that afternoon with the swagger of an heir apparent, only to be met by his mother-in-law's steel-eyed glare as she presented a meticulously documented dossier of Bill's missteps, each page a testament to her resolve to protect the company's future at any price. In that tense boardroom showdown, words flew like shards of broken glass. Katie accused Bill of jeopardizing multi-million-dollar contracts and sullying the Spencer brand. Wyatt countered that his father's legacy had been the bedrock upon which the entire empire was built. Katie reminded him that legacy meant little if the company crumbled under legal sanctions and public outrage. By evening, tempers had flared into open hostility, and two camps solidified. On one side, loyalists appalled by Bill's confession and eager for fresh leadership. On the other, die-hard allies who saw Katie's power grab as opportunistic and disloyal. As board members retreated to cast their votes, the tension became almost unbearable. Coffee cups shook in hand, cell phones buzzed with secret updates, and every quiet whisper threatened to ignite another spark of conflict. Back at the courthouse, Bill's hearing stretched into its second hour. His attorney made a final plea for leniency, arguing that Bill's decision, though disastrous, stemmed from paternal love rather than criminal intent. But the prosecution, wielding Liam's medical records and graphic testimony from attending physicians, painted a vivid picture of a father whose reckless pardon imperiled his own child's life. By the time the judge called recess, the courtroom was a cauldron of whispered conjecture. Would Bill face jail time? Would this scandal destroy the Spencer dynasty? And most importantly, would Liam ever awaken from his coma to find his family in ruins? As twilight descended, Bill slipped out of the back exit, escorted by two sympathetic guards who offered stoic nods in place of words. He paused in the cool evening air, head bowed, drawing a shaky breath as if bracing for the full force of consequence. His phone buzzed, a single text from Wyatt: "No matter what happens, we're family. Awaiting your instructions." Bill stared at the screen, tears blurring the words, before replying simply, "Thank you." But the war for Spencer Publications was not remotely settled. Under the fluorescent lights of their private offices, Katie and Wyatt reconvened, poring over votes tallied in secret. Katie's brow furrowed as the final count displayed. She had eked out a narrow majority. Yet the victory felt hollow against the backdrop of her husband's conflicted silence. Wyatt entered without knocking, shoulders weighed down by the knowledge that his allegiance to his father might cost him his marriage, and the respect of his mother, Quinn, who had sided with Bill. Katie closed her laptop and fixed Wyatt with a measured look. "It's done," she said softly, but Wyatt's hesitation turned her victory smile into a flash of steel. In the days that followed, Spencer Publications felt the tremors of this internal quake. Employees whispered in corridors, clients hesitated on renewal contracts, and the trading floor of the Spencer Media subsidiary saw a slump in stock prices as investors grew uneasy. Bill's announcement of voluntary resignation from the CEO post, effective immediately, sent shockwaves through the market. Grace, now acting CEO pro tempore, strove to calm the storm with press releases extolling Spencer Publications' stability and continued commitment to excellence. But the veneer of corporate unity cracked with every headline detailing Bill's courtroom drama and Katie's ascension. Meanwhile, Liam remained unconscious, his fragile body sustained by machines humming ceaselessly in a private wing of the hospital. Grace visited him daily, reading aloud updates on the boardroom skirmish so that Liam's first waking memory would find him in the loop, not the dark. Each evening she slipped out, her face drawn with exhaustion, wondering whether her loyalty to Bill had compromised her own moral compass. Would she continue to prop up a man who risked everything on a single, irredeemable error? At home in the Spencer mansion, Steffi and Finn confronted the familial rupture over dinner, an uneasy meal punctuated by long silences. Steffi, newly returned from a West Coast photo shoot, found it impossible to reconcile the vivacious designer she'd known with the soul-steeped tragedy now haunting her family. Finn, ever the peacemaker, reminded her that love and forgiveness had built the Spencer dynasty just as surely as corporate deals and board votes. But Steffi shook her head, tears springing as she clutched her wine glass. "I just don't know which Spencer identity is the real one anymore," she whispered. Finn reached across the table, but neither could find words strong enough to rebuild their fractured trust. As dawn approached on the 7th day of this unfolding saga, the corridors of power in Los Angeles felt colder, the air heavier with the scent of uncertainty. Bill, back in his study at the ranch, stared at framed photographs of Liam's first smile, Luna's radiant graduation cap toss, memories he could never erase, but desperately wished to amend. He reached for his phone and dialed Katie's number. When she answered, her voice tight but steady, he offered a tentative olive branch. "I know I've lost your trust, but this family needs unity now more than ever. Help me steer this company back to solid ground." Silence crackled on the line before Katie spoke, her tone unyielding yet not unkind. "Family means everything, Bill. Prove that you're worthy of it." And so the stage is set for the next act. Bill will stand before the judge again when sentences are pronounced, possibly facing prison time for his lapse in judgment. Katie will assume her role at the helm of Spencer Publications, navigating hostile shareholders and a fractious board. Wyatt will walk the tightrope between filial duty and marital loyalty, and the rest of the Spencer clan will watch, held hostage by fear, hope, and the unbreakable bonds of family, waiting to see whether forgiveness can truly conquer tragedy, or whether even the most powerful dynasties can crumble beneath the weight of one man's fateful choice. In the world of the bold and the beautiful, redemption may demand a price far steeper than any courtroom fine, and the question on everyone's lips is whether the Spencers are willing to pay it. As the sun rose over Los Angeles, its light glinting off the glass facades of Spencer Publications headquarters, the reverberations of yesterday's showdown still echoed through every corridor, every conference room. Katie Logan took her seat at the head of the boardroom table. Her shoulders squared, her expression steely, while Wyatt Spencer hovered in the doorway, unsure whether to stand behind her as husband and ally or slip away and seek out his father's side. The minutes ticked by as shareholders filed in, their murmurs a low undertone of uncertainty and speculative excitement. Katie tapped her gavel, a small crystal heirloom of her Logan lineage, and called the meeting to order. One by one, department heads delivered terse reports. Advertising revenues had dipped 7% since Bill's confession hit the headlines. Certain high-profile clients were delaying contract renewals pending reassurances of corporate stability. Internal morale surveys showed a marked spike in employee anxiety. Katie absorbed each statistic without flinching, then laid out her plan. A 3-point emergency restructuring that would centralize decision-making in a new executive committee, curtail discretionary spending on risk-laden ventures, and launch a media tour of Spencer Publications' key talent, Grace Buckingham, now acting CEO, to lead with messages of continuity and contrition. She concluded by nominating Wyatt to chair the new committee, a move intended to both honor his role as heir and bind him to her cause. Wyatt accepted with a curt nod, though his eyes flickered toward the empty seat once occupied by Bill Spencer. Meanwhile, in the hushed stillness of the private hospital suite, Grace Buckingham leaned over Liam's comatose form and whispered promises of the world she would build for him if he woke, a life free from scandal, full of genuine forgiveness and unbreakable love. The soft hum of machines punctuated her words as she smoothed a stray lock of hair from Liam's forehead. Unbeknownst to her, Finn had slipped in through the side entrance, his face ashen with fatigue and worry. He hovered at the doorframe, torn between respect for Liam's privacy and the desperate need to see his brother alive. Grace looked up, her relief so intense it was almost painful. "He needs you," she said, stepping aside. Finn crossed to the bedside, took Liam's hand, and murmured fragments of the conversation that had upended their world. Katie's boardroom coup, Bill's courtroom reckoning, the unborn question of Luna's fate. Finn's voice broke. "We need to hold this family together," he whispered. Across town, Bill sat alone in the sparsely furnished holding cell at the courthouse annex, the walls bare except for a lone window barred against escape. The door clicked shut behind his guards, and he sank to the floor, his suit crumpled around him. In his mind's eye he saw the boardroom tableau. Katie presiding, Wyatt at her side, Grace front and center, and felt as though the ground beneath him had split open. A guard slid through a tray with a sandwich and water. Bill thanked him without looking up. He closed his eyes and pictured Liam's past smile, a memory sharp enough to cut through his despair. He clenched his fists. He would emerge from this cell a changed man, he vowed, humble, resolute, worthy once more of trust. Late that afternoon, the judge reconvened the court for Bill's sentencing. Reporters and onlookers crowded into the gallery, their cameras trained on the man who had toppled from media mogul to courtroom defendant. Katie sat in the front row, flanked by Wyatt and Grace. Finn and Steffi were there too, their hands entwined, eyes fixed on Bill as he stood to receive his fate. The judge's gavel fell like thunder. Bill Spencer was sentenced to 6 months house arrest, community service, and a hefty fine. There would be no prison time, but the conditions were severe. Regular check-ins with a court-appointed monitor, public apologies to shareholders, and mandated attendance at parenting classes designed for those whose decisions had endangered their own children. A collective exhale rippled through the courtroom. Katie allowed herself the smallest hint of satisfaction. Enough to lean back, release a breath she hadn't known she'd been holding, but she immediately masked it with a look of compassionate concern, mindful of how easily alliance could turn to bitterness. That evening, the Spencer mansion felt different. Its walls seemed to hold their breath. Liam remained in his private room, unconscious but stable, surrounded by monitors and the soft glow of family photographs. Katie invited Bill to join them for a subdued dinner in the drawing room. He arrived at the threshold, coat off, tie undone, humility plain in the tilt of his head. Wyatt gave him an awkward half-smile. Finn squeezed his hand. Grace offered a seat beside her, which he accepted. Katie presided over the table like a queen granting clemency, pouring Bill a modest glass of water rather than wine, a reminder that this was no triumphant return, but a first step on a long road to redemption. Conversation was tentative. Will Liam wake? What would happen to Luna? How would the company survive? Each question was an unhealed wound. As the candles burned low, a sudden knock on the panel door startled them. Poppy Nozawa entered, her face pale as moonlight, clutching an envelope stamped with the Forrester Design logo. I was going to wait, she began, her voice trembling, but this matters now. She handed the envelope to Katie, who tore it open to reveal a single sheet of typewritten text. An addendum to one of Luna's unreleased scripts, dated 2 days ago, with a note from a producer affirming that Luna was written back into the show and that her return episode was already in post-production. A collective gasp rose from the table. Finn's eyes lit with stunned hope. Steffi gasped, pressing a hand to her mouth. Grace leaned forward, startled. Bill felt his heart hammer in his chest. Katie examined the page, then looked at Poppy. "You're sure this is authentic?" Poppy nodded, tears glistening. In that suspended moment, the oppressive weight of guilt, rivalry, and fear gave way to a fragile spark of optimism. If Luna was alive, if the scripts could be altered, if the producers had chosen to spare her, then perhaps Liam's ordeal and Bill's penance were not the final chapters, but the crucible through which they all might be reborn. Even Katie's victory at Spencer Publications felt less like a conquest and more like a call to rebuild. And as the family clustered around that single sheet of paper, the promise of Luna's return, her bright, indomitable spirit, illuminated the gathering dusk, reminding them that in their world, even the gravest mistakes could be rewritten, and tragedy could yet be transformed into a story of forgiveness, resilience, and unexpected hope.